we're gonna try to get this flathead running. I have checked all the wiring. I've checked the coil. I thought the coil was bad because the ohms or resistance is high, but I put it in a running engine that I have and it ran all right. So in a moment, I'm going to throw a battery on here. I'm going to throw a gas tank on this fuel line. I have replaced the fuel line. The diaphragm feels good in the fuel pump. I put a new fuel filter on it. Carburetor looks good inside, but it looks really rough on the outside and also the choke plate. But anyways, checked all the wiring. It's good. Right now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add an oil filter or an oil pressure gauge. I'm not going to do any temperature gauges right now. Yesterday, I took the plumbing off of the radiator and flushed the engine block out and flushed the radiator out so it can flow well. It's got a leak on the passenger side water pump right now. I did not look at the points in the distributor here. I'm just going to roll the dice and see how it goes. But in a moment we will turn it over. As soon as I get this oil pressure gauge on here, we will turn this thing over and attempt to fire it up. Alright, so I'm not going to crank it yet. I did get the oil pressure gauge put on here. I'm going to throw a battery on it now and spin it over. I've got the ignition wire disconnected from the coil. I'm going to turn the ignition on, make sure I have voltage to the wire here. And then I'm going to obviously make sure the starter works by turning it over. And I'm going to also see if I can get a little bit of oil pressure by spinning it over before it fires. Because I have a feeling this carburetor, I've got a rebuilt carburetor, the exact same model, so I will probably, if I have any trouble once I get ready to start this thing, if I have very much trouble once this bowl gets full, if it has trouble starting, I'll probably swap the carburetors out. Just to keep from, I don't know, just to eliminate the issues. And the carburetor on this, in my opinion, is probably a good place for an issue. So for now, I'm gonna throw a battery on it. I'm just hooking this up negative ground because it looks like that's the way they wired it up in the past, and it's got a 12-volt coil on it. And I did, like I said earlier, I did verify this coil. I put this coil in my other running flathead, and it worked. So I'm going to switch this over to voltage DC. Now I have the ignition on, and I do have 12 volts at the ignition wire, so that's good. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to spin this thing over. Here's the little oil pressure thing I rigged up, coming out of the pressure port there. Here's a little key system, solenoid, and then you got the battery terminals, negative on negative, positive on positive. Let's fire this thing up and see if it's, or just spin this thing over. We're not firing it up, spinning it over. Yeah, the oil pressure needle actually moved. I didn't think it was, but yeah, we've got oil in the line here. So good, we do have oil pressure. See if you can see it here. See the needle right there on 0. So now we know it spins. I guess I could put my tongue on this and see if it's pulling fluid before I put the gas tank on it. does feel like the fuel pump is pumping or sucking. So hopefully it will, doesn't have a lot of suction, but it feels like it does have suction. All right, we're one step closer. I noticed this, it's not leaking as bad as it was earlier, but it looked like this water pump was leaking from around the pulley shaft here. I mean, it's something I would replace anyway, but I put a bucket underneath it just to catch it. I got the radiator full right now. I kind of enjoy this part of it more than I do it running. I enjoy the investigation part and trying to get everything ready to run more so than I do the running part. They had some belts on here. They had a little skinny, like a 3/8 V-belt on this thing here. And you can see this is supposed to be a 3/4 belt, and they put a little bitty belt on here. But anyways, this is an old belt, a very old belt. This belt was on my 39 flathead. It had dual water pump pulleys and dual pulleys up here. My other 39 did. So this is one of the old belts off of it, but it's better than the belt that they had on it, because the little bitty skinny V-belt they had on it, it would not turn the water pumps for some reason. You can see this belt here is not doing so great. Right now, it may not make it. Oh well, there's a lot of parts gonna have to be bought for this thing. I may as well try to get her going first. All right, I'm just gonna go for it. We got a fuel tank over here. It's just a regular gas tank with some regular, I think 93 octane in it. I got the ignition wire hooked back up. The bowl is dry right now in this carburetor, and I have done nothing to the carburetor. It looks pretty good inside of it, so we're gonna hope on that. I'm gonna spin it over now and try to fill this fuel filter up. Filling up slow. See it right there, that fuel filter right here. There's no vent tube in these types of carburetors to fill the bowl up. I imagine that I could take this line off and get a squirt bottle and fill the bowl up, but these particular carbs don't have the little vent tube there. We got some accelerator pump, pretty good pump actually. Wow, it's squirting pretty good in there. Killing the battery. Why is the filter dry now? about points now. All right, so what I'm gonna do is, that's the distributor right there. It's one of the old diver's helmet looking distributors, and that oil that you see on the distributor is coming from that fan hub right there. I put some oil in that fan hub because it was dry, and now I know why it was dry. The gaskets leak in it, so maybe they'll come back around, maybe they won't. But anyways, I'm going to, before I pop the face off of that distributor down there and look at the points, I have no idea about points. That's just not something I know much about yet. I'm going to change this coil out. I know that coil ran this engine a few moments ago. I did it myself. I took this coil off and replaced it, but this thing has electronic ignition inside of this distributor here, so I don't know. Maybe this, when I ohmed out this coil, it's got a lot of resistance. So between the negative and positive terminal. So maybe I need to change that coil out. That's what I'm going to do now. So I think what I'm going to do is wheel this thing outside and empty this radiator. Take the radiator off so I can see the distributor better. I'm looking in the distributor. It doesn't look terrible, but I need to file those points or clean those points up a little bit. I think I see 2 contact points in there for this thing. Like I said, points just aren't my thing. I've rebuilt several engines, but none of them have points anymore. I'm gonna get this radiator back off, I guess, and get this fan off. Or maybe if I just get the fan off first. I just want to hear it. I just want to hear it try to fire. Right now it's spinning over too much, and it's 12 volts on this 6-volt starter, which, yeah, that'll work, but to keep cranking and cranking and cranking on it, it's just a lot of it's just a lot on that starter. All right, well, I'm going to start taking this fan blade off first. I was going to take the coil off, but I just tried the coil with it, but try a new coil. I mean, I've got a coil. I just don't think that should be it, though. If this coil works on another engine, why wouldn't it work on this engine? Then again, that other engine doesn't have points, so I don't know. I think I see everything I watch. I see guys cleaning points all the time. So, and this thing is obviously set for at least 20 years without the points being touched. So I think I need to start there. Do here is just loosen this fan. The fan will drop down. Let that belt tension go. What I really should have done yesterday when I had this radiator off, I really should have messed with those points then instead of now. Oh well. radiator off, quit messing around. Because even if I get this thing loose, I can slide the fan forward, but it ain't gonna go forward far enough to get off that. Let's get the radiator off and quit messing around. Alright, so I got the radiator off. Now I'm going to take the fan off. I already took the belt off the fan. I think what I'm going to try to do, once I get these points kind of cleaned off, I think it's getting a little bit late here tonight, but what I'm going to do is tomorrow I'm going to leave the radiator off and the fan off and try to get this thing to fire. That way I have better access to this distributor. In theory, that's what I'm gonna do. Just while I have this fan off, I should probably paint this thing. Really, I'd rather blast it first, but this is the ugliest yellow for an engine, in my opinion, I guess. Somebody said it was industrial, but I don't know. This thing didn't start its life as yellow for sure. This thing has got a ton of pitting in it. Doesn't look like they painted over rust though. It looks like it was rusted bad, pitted all to hell. Somebody blasted it and then painted it. This little clip right here is broke also. Looks like this clip's kind of rotted away right here. One side of it's clipped, but the other part is not. Feeling like something I don't need to open right now anyway. I'm seeing a little bit of corrosion right here where the condenser, where the power comes in, ties onto this post right here where the condenser is. There is some corrosion that makes me worry about the conductivity here. Doesn't look good. I'll show you what I mean here in a minute. The points themselves look really clean. Alright, so here's what I'm seeing. Right here, it does not look good to me. I'm going to ohm it out here in a moment and see. But here's one of the points. Here's one of the points. And the cam is lubed in there, like the little distributor cam, little lobes. They look pretty good. I'm gonna send some pictures to a friend of mine that knows much more about this than I. All right, so I took the distributor. I think one of the problems I found earlier, I had this old distributor button here. This is not the one that was on it earlier. The one that was on it earlier, the little flat part inside this hole was kind of wallered out enough to where I'm not sure that it was spinning correctly. I don't know if it was spinning at all, to be honest with you. I've got it here, but it's kind of hard to show you. I did take some sandpaper and I went in between all of these points. There's two, there's one here and there's one here. Got in between there with some like 400 grit sandpaper and just kind of cleaned them up a little bit. I've got another one of these and I've got another coil, but for now, I took number 1 and number 2 spark plugs out, laid them on the head, turned the engine over with this, and I'm getting spark. I'm getting spark at the plug, really good spark at both 1 and 2. I didn't check anymore, but anyway, it's getting late here now, so what I'm going to do is wait until tomorrow and try to fire this thing up. All right, I'm back at it. I'm gonna give it a shot. All right, so I had the battery on charge all last night. It just got too late last night and I had some things to do this morning, so I'm just now getting back out here at it. If you remember, I sanded the points. I didn't adjust anything, but I tested the coil. I did verify fire at the points when I break them, and then I verified fire at spark plug 1 and 2, and I stopped there. So the fuel pump seems to be working. It didn't seem to be pumping very hard, but then again, these are low pressure pumps. Carburetor does have a good squirt, like accelerator. Whenever I pump the gas on the carburetor, I installed a oil pressure gauge yesterday. I've got the battery down here fully charged. I felt like I cranked it too long yesterday. Never heard any kind of fire at all yesterday. I think it was because of the points. I hope the starter is okay. I have 6-volt starters in 2 of my other vehicles that are on 12-volt systems. They do fine, but then again, they fire off very quickly. I never just run them trying to start. So anyways, I'm gonna hook the battery up here. The battery is charged and hooked up. I'm not going to run it long. Obviously, I don't have the radiator on here, but I didn't want to put the radiator and everything fan back on without making sure it's going to fire with this distributor here. Well, that fired up very quickly. That was a surprise. It was running 50 pounds of oil pressure. I don't even know what to say, to be honest with you. That thing fired up very quickly. Wow, that is nuts. This carburetor, if you guys were here and could see it, this thing's been sitting for a long time. I'm amazed. I'm gonna do it again. Hey, I ain't gonna run it long because it obviously no water, so there's still some water in the block because it was dripping all night. Chokes. I'm gonna barely unchoke it here. Maybe I'll choke it all the way. Thing's awesome, fires pretty quick. Alright, well there you have it. You guys saw it run. Actually, I may turn the lights off in the garage, shut the garage door, and see if we can see some fire come out of the headers. First, I'm going to air it out in here. Somebody had made a comment on one of my videos telling me to fire this thing up in a dimly lit room. So right now I'm in my dimly lit garage. See if we can see some fire come out of these headers here. I didn't see any fire, but definitely heard the noise. Alright guys, I think that wraps it up for the 59 AB flathead I bought here on a vintage homemade engine stand that looks like it's been stick welded together with coat hangers. Hope you enjoyed it. Please like and subscribe. Thank you for watching.